In this third and final part of inspecting a bike, we will inspect the engine, the exhaust and the drivetrain on the bike. I'm gonna have a handheld shot again, so bear with me. We're gonna do some close-ups so you can see fine detail, and it's gonna be a naked eye inspection. No tools gonna be used. So whatever is bolted down will stay bolted down. So come on along and take a look at fine detail. We'll go from top to bottom here on the engine, from the cam cover down. This part is the cam cover and is held in place on this particular model by two of these bolts, one on the left, one on the right. It's got a little rubber seal, and sometimes that leaks oil. I'm looking for any kind of oil leaks, anything down there, but not even dirt or barely any. That's good news. Next one, I'm looking at this cam gasket. This black line here is a rubber seal. Just getting this one out of your face. There. This is your cam gasket. It should leak no oil whatsoever anywhere. So I'm looking for evidence of leaking oil, any kind of leakage. Everything appears to be just fine with the cam gasket. Cam gaskets are fairly easy to change. You only need to get the tank out of the way. I'm also looking at any kind of rusting on these frame. Let me just get this petcock out of your way here. Any of these structural bolts here, like this one, looking for any evidence of rusting. If you have to take the engine apart, those bolts have to go, and if they are rusted in, they are a source of a lot of grief. This one checks out. Condition of the rubber seal on the carb. The carb is not exactly the same as the engine, but the carb should also check out. So should the shut-off valve for fuel. And as this is rubber, same principles apply as we had with the tire. There should be no crack lines in it. And this one seems to be in good condition. Good condition all the way down. That's good. And on the carb, I don't want to see any kind of leak, anything at the bottom end here. There's nothing to be seen. So we looked at the cam gasket. One level down, we have a head gasket. If it leaks any engine oil out, it's a lot of work to remove the cam, the tank, the head, disconnect the exhaust, and to work your way down here. It's a lot of work if this one leaks, but nothing leaks here. Oops, there's nothing wrong here. You can see these cooling fins, also symmetrical, nice. None of these fins are broken. None of the corners are chipped. Everything is looking nice, and you can also see through them. You can see my fingers wiggling through. So these cooling fins are not clogged up with dirt, so they actually are cooling the engine effectively as per design and original idea. One more level down from the head gasket is the base gasket. Same thing. If this one leaks, it's a lot of work because you have to remove everything above it. So I'm just looking at it there. It looks good, it looks dry, that's good. Any kind of chipping, pitting, separation, leak, that there's a little bit of chisel print there or screwdriver print there. This seal has obviously been replaced at least once, and that little chisel print is from that. That doesn't even count as a structural deformity. And is definitely not a source of any kind of leak. You also have little washers underneath that bolt. That one there is the bolt for your cam chain tensioner adjustment. That little copper washer underneath sometimes leak, not on this bike. And there is one more there above it. That one just holds the adjuster mechanism and it doesn't leak either. These engine seals check out. What I'm looking at from here on this side is any kind of evidence of fall. If this gets damaged and engine oil leaks out, okay, there's no engine oil on this side, but there is on the clutch side. So if this gets cracked, it's a problem. I am looking at it and it's nice and symmetrical. There's just a little bit of scuffing on it. Let's get it up close. Yep, that's not a crack. That's nothing. That's not even as deep as half the depth of the lettering that's embossed in the or cast in the aluminum alternator cover here. That's looking good. There is one more seal between the engine and the starter motor here. It's about here, and it comes out with the starter motor. You can see it on my starter motor video, and sometimes it leaks. When it's old, typically it leaks, and it would drip out here and leak here. But other than dirt, that's just dirt, because the first one picked up dirt, but the second one picks up nothing, so that's just dirt. And down here is where your engine oil filter lives. I want to see nice bolts whose corners are not rounded off like that, to make sure that oil change and filter change is easy and it's not leaking anything down here. What else I'm also looking at is that these fins are not chipped and not broken off and not dent. They are all running in a straight line, so the crankcase of the motorcycle here never hit a stone or a curb or any of that nature, and that would indicate that the crankcase is cracked. That's not the case with the crankcase in this case. Okay, let's just take a look at this bolt there. That one. This is your oil drain bolt. It's got to have nice, sharp and crisp corners for easy oil change, and that's exactly what I'm seeing. So that's good. That passes inspection there. Now the exhaust. The exhaust bolts should be fairly free of rust, but because they are subject to extreme heat, they also rust. So does the exhaust system rust, because these were not made of stainless steel. So that little bit of bluish discoloration is perfectly normal for any exhaust. And when I shake the exhaust, I don't see any kind of looseness in it, and that bluing and discoloration just happens with the exhaust. And the shifter is, I'm inspecting the shifter for structural. If the bike has been in a fall, the shifter would bend and come out asymmetrical. This is nice and straight and level, and we lost a little bit of rubber here, but that's more like due to age and with your boot and with your toes and shifting. I don't see this piece being distorted in a fall. Same goes for the foot peg ends. If the bike has been in a fall, you would see scratch marks here, which I do not see. These marks here are called scraping the foot peg. They happen when you're cornering sometimes and you're leaning with the bike. That's what these are from, and they are very mild and shallow. On the exhaust, I see some rust and discoloration, but that's from corroding and losing metal on this pin here on the foot peg here. There, take a look this way. This pin here is rusting and is leaking that little bit of rust there on top of it, because anywhere else on the same pipe I don't see any rusting, and this part is just as old as this part. So all I can figure is that some rust is being deposited from the foot peg above. Okay, so that's the exhaust system, and that was the engine left side inspection. And the exhaust system looks shiny and nice. If the bike has ever been in a fall, it would show on the turn signals. That's just paint missing, that's not actual That's not an actual dent. That's not the metal. The shape of the metal remained the same. You can see, and there's no any kind of scratches or any kind of chips on this exhaust. The shape of it is nice and unflattened, and the inside of it doesn't appear to be rusty. That's good. So the exhaust system should work fine. Let me show you, just for contrast, how a piece of exhaust looks like when it doesn't pass inspection and is garbage. On this one you can see massive rusting everywhere. Actually, rusting happens to the degree that you have holes here where there shouldn't be any, and these parts of the exhaust are rusted so much that it wouldn't hold another tailpipe or head pipe in it. Same here, rusting through, and is not only noisy but also ugly. And you can see here a shorter piece which I collected in my travels, and this is how bad rusty exhaust components look like. None of this is visible on this bike that we just inspected. Homemade Mickey Mouse patches. Obviously this canister rusted through. So that's how bad exhaust components look like. Just for contrast, so you have a feel what passes inspection here and what doesn't. Let's just check the exhaust and the engine on the other side real fast. And the seals on this side are just as good as the seals are on the other side. There are no two seals, it's the same one piece of seal, and I'm just double checking it for good measure. The control cable should be, for operating the clutch, it should be nice and lubricated. This is somewhat lubricated, could use a little more, but is not frayed. It doesn't have loose wires sticking out from it. Doesn't have kinks and bird caging in it. This is a nice piece of wire that's still perfectly functional, and could use just a little bit of over lubing, and that's it. This one is not wiring, this is just a protective sheathing on the wiring that's fraying, so I'm not too worried about the outside skin on that one. Engine oil inside the engine. Take out the cap. On most modern bikes you have a viewing window here or somewhere on the crankcase to check your oil level. Not on this one. And when you check the oil level, it should be nice and clean, like this one. You can see the drop at the end of the dipstick here, that it's a clean surface. If the engine oil is black, dirty, has sediment in it, or looks like tar, it's way past overdue for an oil change. But this one is perfect, and it should smell good too. Yeah, this one smells like oil. Okay, it doesn't smell like bitumen. And the engine oil should be between the lower mark here and the upper mark here when the engine oil is checked. But the motorcycle is not on a level ground, so we're not checking the engine oil here. The seals check out on this side, and the rubber for the carb also checks out on this side. This side of the carbs don't leak out either. That's a good one. And the bolts appear to be without any rusting. If you have rusty bolts, they are so much work to remove and drill out or tap out, and they are extreme amount of work. So none of that applies here. The center stand and the kickstand should also be nice and straight. It's a structural component, but I usually do it here when I do the drivetrain. and everything should be nice and lubricated. All the springs should be there. This is usually a double spring, one spring inside another spring. There's only a single spring here, and nothing should be dripping here with oil or anything. Everything is nice and clean here. Okay, now the drivetrain. The drivetrain starts with an engine sprocket here, of which you can only see the teeth, if any. Yes, barely. Okay, and then you have the chain to inspect and the rear sprocket. Let's get started with the chain. Preferably the chain has to be an O-ring chain, and for that you have to come to the end. That's where the easiest it is to inspect. And yes, it is an O-ring chain between an outer plate and an inner plate. This one, you can see that little black line between these two plates, and that's an O-ring. So this chain is an O-ring chain. 30 years ago, in 1981, when this motorcycle was manufactured, there were no O-ring chains, so this chain is not as old as the motorcycle. That's good. Other than its O-ringness, it should be lubricated, and it's got a couple of rust spots on it, which is not necessarily a bad news, but not a good news either. But it's nothing to the depth of rusting that would compromise this chain. Let's listen to the chain. It's a little bit noisy because it's a little bit stretched out, and particularly at the front end. Just for the microphone, yeah, the chain is definitely noisy. It is noisy because it's halfway through its useful life, and this is how I know it. You look at this chain adjusting mechanism with which you can set the tension in the chain. This bolt is it. On a new chain, the wheel, the rear axle is slid forward inside the swing arm, and this bolt has the amount of thread here. You have a lot of thread here and very few threads on the inside of this adjuster mechanism. As the chain is being stretched and stretched, the rear axle is being slipped further and further away from the engine, and this with the help of this bolt here that's being turned like so, clockwise, and as it's being done so, you have less and less thread on this side of the bolt and more thread on the inside of the bolt, on the inside of the mechanism. So this chain is maybe halfway through or 2/3 through its useful life. And what I'm looking at is that both chain tensioner mechanisms should look the same. That's how I check to make sure that the wheels and axles run parallel. Sorry about the landscape. Okay, they appear to be the same. But one more thing to check on the sprocket is the same concept. If the wheel is not aligned well, then the sprockets wear asymmetrically. On these sprockets, you can see that the little bit of grease on the top of the teeth is displaced nicely and evenly across the whole width of the tooth. Let's look at another sprocket, another tooth. You can see that the axle is lined up nicely and parallel, and the sprocket teeth are being worn nicely and evenly everywhere. There's not a lot of grease on the sprocket, so that would indicate that the chain is a little dry, but that's nothing a little lubrication wouldn't be able to fix. One more thing that I cannot check on this motorcycle is the state of the front sprockets. I'm going to show you how they look like when they are badly worn. I'm just going to use this exhaust canister here that we looked at previously, and look at this. Look at the teeth on this one. they appear to be bent and curved there that way. The tips of them seem to be curving that way, and that's just an illusion, although an accurate one. The teeth actually don't get bent on a worn sprocket. What happens is that this is how it's mounted on the engine, and it's rotating this way and is grabbing the chain this way. As it is rotating, the top of the chain here is being pulled. That's how the rear wheel rotates, and that's how the vehicle moves forward. Okay, when this sprocket is grabbing the chain and pulling it this way, this part of the tooth wears more than this part of the tooth. Okay, so the back of the teeth don't wear, only the front of the teeth here wear. That's why they look like they're being bent, but they're actually just dished out. Okay, this is how worn sprockets look like. So on this motorcycle, the chains look good, the wheel alignment, the chain links look good, the wheel alignment looks good, and the sprocket teeth look good. And just for contrast, I want to show you a chain with no rust but problems, uncurable problems. On this chain, it used to be nice and gold plated, and it's lubricated thoroughly or dirty thoroughly. Here where I scraped off the lubricant, that link of chain is actually frozen and seized up. The first one works here, and I don't have two hands for this. Okay, it pivots there, it pivots there, it pivots there, it works there for the next one, there, and it works there too, but it doesn't work here. It's seized here. I can't do it well enough with one hand, but this link here at this pivot point has seized. Okay, and when you look at the length of chain with seized links, they don't line up in the direction of the pull. Okay, they're gonna be above. So to demonstrate that, I'm just gonna try to make one look like a seized one. That's how it would. That's how they would all look like. And if this was seized, there you go. If this link was seized there, that's how this link would permanently be shaped like. When you see anything like that on a motorcycle, that's gonna be a chain that is done, is finished. A new chain is $120, $150, and with a new chain you would need new sprockets because the sprockets and chain wear together, and if you put new chain on old sprockets, the old sprockets are just gonna destroy the new chain, or the other way around. You try to put an old chain on a new sprocket, it just won't work. And I've got another video on that that you can see all the details of geometry and the explanation. So this bike has passed inspection here on all fronts, and although it's got a couple of issues like maybe lubricating a chain and cleaning it, it's got no major issues that would indicate that it would break down anytime soon, or it would fail on you when you need it most. So that's how you do a thorough inspection. I hope you guys learned something from it. Enjoy riding and be